Have you ever wondered why some products just explode? They become instant hits overnight, while others, even from these giant household name companies, just completely belly flop? Well, it almost always boils down to one simple thing. Do they really get their customer? And let me tell you, in today's market, which moves at lightning speed, getting that wrong, well, that's a very expensive mistake.
I mean, it's the million-dollar question, right? Why is it so hard for brands to know what we, the customers, actually want? And it's not like they aren't trying, companies are pouring fortunes into research. But there's this huge gap between what all the spreadsheets say and what people actually do when they're scrolling online or walking down an aisle. And that gap, that's where great ideas go to die.
And that disconnect we were just talking about, it has a price tag, and it is huge. We're talking billions of dollars. Billions with a B. That's how much money is just thrown away every single year on campaigns and products that were basically just a shot in the dark. They were built on a guess, not on real proof. It's a staggering number, and it points to a massive systemic problem.
So how did we get here? How did we end up in this massive, high-stakes situation where so much is just left to chance? Well, let's dive into what the source material for this explainer calls the billion-dollar guessing game. Okay, so this really breaks down the core issues with the old way of doing things. Traditional research. Think about focus groups or those long surveys you get in your email. For one, they are just way too slow. By the time you get the results back, the whole world might have changed. Plus, they're super expensive, and you can't really scale them. You're talking to maybe a few dozen people, right? And the biggest problem of all? You're still just making a huge assumption that those 50 people are going to think and act exactly like 50 million people. It's a big leap of faith.
All right, so if the old way is broken, what's the fix? Well, this is where things get really interesting. The source material introduces a totally different way of thinking about this. It calls it a new kind of sandbox.
I want you to imagine a kind of digital playground, a totally safe space where you can build your ideas, test them out, and even watch them fail, all without any real-world consequences. That's the core concept. It's a huge shift away from just asking people what they think they'll do, and instead creating this virtual world where you can actually see what they do, in partnership with a digital version of your audience.
And the engine driving this whole sandbox idea is something called an audience simulator. Now, don't think of this like a survey tool. That's not it at all. A better way to think about it is like a flight simulator, but for business strategy. It's a seriously engineered platform that basically gives you instant access to a huge digital community that's ready to give you feedback right now. We're talking minutes, not months.
Okay, I know this all sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? So how does it actually work? I mean, who are these people inside the simulation? Well, that brings us to what might be the coolest part of this whole thing, the idea of a digital twin. So the basic building block of this entire system is what's called a synthetic persona. Now, let's be super clear. These are not real people, but they are incredibly accurate digital representations of them, these digital twins. Each one is built from massive amounts of anonymous real-world data, so they're designed to think, act, and make choices just like a real person from a specific customer group would.
And this quote from the source really gets to the heart of how deep this goes. The whole point isn't just to copy-paste buying habits. No, these personas are designed to, and I quote, mimic real human emotions, biases, and rational trade-offs. Think about what that means. It means they can weigh a decision the same messy way a real human does, balancing things like brand loyalty, price, and even how an ad makes them feel.
So how does this all come together? It's basically a three-step process. Step 1, the platform crunches just enormous amounts of anonymous, real-world data. Step 2, it uses that data to generate thousands and thousands of these unique digital twin personas. And finally, Step 3, it lets them loose in a simulation. It just sits back and watches how they react to a new product or a new ad campaign, tracking their entire journey, from the very first click all the way to the final checkout, or, the moment they decide to just walk away.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how. But now for the most important part, the so what? What's the actual real-world advantage here? What does getting this kind of instant feedback actually do for you? Honestly, this chart pretty much says it all. Look at the difference. With the old way, you're waiting weeks, even months. With the ZCoded way, it's real-time. Cost goes from high to low. Scale goes from tiny and limited to absolutely massive. But for me, the most important change is right there at the bottom. You're moving from a world of assumptions to a world of actual proof.
And that speed advantage? Let's put a number on it. The source material claims this can help brands make decisions 10 times faster.
10x. In a market that moves as fast as ours does today, that kind of speed is everything. It's the difference between being the one who sets the trend and being the one who's always struggling to catch up.
And the cost savings are just as mind-blowing. I mean, look at this chart. We're not talking about shaving off a few percentage points here and there. According to the source, we're looking at an 80 to 90% reduction in cost. That is a game changer. That's money you can now pump back into the business, into the ideas that you now know are going to work.
So let's just recap the big wins here. First, you get insane speed. Answers in an instant. Second, you save a ton of money. Third, and this is really important, it's all built on anonymous data, so everyone's privacy is protected. But maybe the biggest payoff of all is just confidence. It's the ability to take that creative spark, that gut feeling, and actually back it up with hard data, turning an "I think this might work" into an "I know this will work."
Which kind of leads us to our final big picture section. If this tech is already here today, where are we heading? Are we really on the edge of being able to simulate the future?
You know, when you boil it all down, the core promise here is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's about finally ending that billion-dollar guessing game we talked about. It's about moving away from launching a new idea with your fingers crossed, hoping it works, to launching it with total clarity and confidence, because you already know how people are going to react.
And that leaves us with a pretty mind-bending thought to end on. If we can now accurately model and predict something as complex and, let's be honest, as irrational as human consumer behavior, what are the limits here? I mean, really, if we can simulate an audience today, what can't we simulate tomorrow? That's a question I'm going to be thinking about for a while.